Conclusion. The previous study provides evidence on how to trade surplus increases the total output of an economy. Trade surplus arises when goods and services are exported by a country than imported. Having a trade surplus in one country is one of the ways on how to know if the country is having economic growth or not. So, as we can see in the previous slides, to increase the total output of an economy, we need to have a trade surplus. But what is trade surplus? Trade surplus happens when exported goods and services are higher than imported goods. So, sabihin na lang natin, for example, yung usong-usong ngayong product dito sa Philippines na Brilliant Skin Essentials na nakakapag-export tayo from here sa Philippines papunta sa ibang bansa ng more than 60%. At yung skincare product naman galing sa ibang bansa ay pumapasok dito or nag-import sa atin ng more or less 20%. So makikita natin doon na yung exported product natin is 60% at yung imported product natin is 20%. So makikita natin doon na mas madami yung nalalabas or na-export nating product from here sa Philippines papunta sa ibang bansa than sa pumapasok na product sa atin. So, makikita natin doon na nagkakaroon tayo ng trade surplus. Kasi ngayon, trade surplus, nangyayari siya kapag mas madami yung na-export nating product kaysa sa na-i-import nating product. So, sa pagkakaroon ng trade surplus, dito na nagkakaroon ng isang country ng economic growth. Dahil nga, dito nagkakaroon ng pagtaas ng exported product than imported product. In this study, the researchers aim to know what are the advantages and disadvantages of trade surplus in one country. And it states that the advantages of it is the country can purchase the lot of goods and services in other countries because of having a lot of income. So in this study, we are able to know what are the advantages and disadvantages of having a trade surplus in one country. So kaya niyang makapag-purchase and makapag-produce ng goods and services dahil nga sa dami ng lumalabas na product sa isang country, sa dami din na pumapasok na income or kita. So dahil doon nakapag-purchase siya or yung country na yon ng mga goods and services from other country. And yeah, even though the country has a lot of expenses, they are willing and able to purchase goods and services because of the income by having a trade surplus in that country. Having a trade surplus is a way better than having a trade deficit because based on Will Kenton on November 22, 2020, a trade deficit occurs when a country imports more than it exports. It has an effect in a country's economic rates. So, based kay Will Kenton, mas maganda daw yung pagkakaroon ng trade surplus kaysa sa trade deficit. Kasi kahit saan nga naman natin titignan, mas maganda yung mas madami tayong na-export na product kaysa na-import. Kasi nga, sa pagdami ng na-export nating product, mas madami yung pumapasok na pera sa atin. At yung pagkakaroon ng trade deficit nakaka-apekto sa economic currency rate. Kaya, mas maganda talaga na magkaroon ng trade surplus kaysa sa trade deficit. A trade surplus is an economic indicator of a good trade balance where the exports of a nation outweigh its imports. Few principles are more overlooked in economic than the balance of trade. So, trade surplus is an economic indicator for a good trade balance. So, para sa pinakasimpleng explanation, para daw siyang instrument na nakakatulong para makita natin kung tumataas ba or bumababa yung rate ng isang economy or ng isang country. People tend to think that a trade deficit is poor and a trade surplus is good, just as people believe that large budget deficits are bad and the budget surpluses are good. Trade enhances competitiveness and reduces global prices, which benefits customers by increasing their purchasing power and leading to a rise in the market surpluses. So, in this part, many people think that having a trade surplus nagkakaroon ng magandang resulta at ang pagkakaroon naman trade deficit ay nagkakaroon ng negative result. Pero kung titingnan natin maigi sa balance of trade dito sa module, sabi dito na a trade deficit sometimes referred to as a negative trade balance result if a country's import payments are more than in its exports earning. Oh my God. Meaning to say, yung pagkakaroon daw ng trade deficit, mas madaming nabibili yung isang country kesa nabebenta. Oo, nagkakaroon to ng negative trade balance, pero kung mas titingnan natin mas mabuti, okay pa din kasi may pambili pa nga tayo, kaya nga tayo nakakabili kasi may pambili pa tayo. Pero sa balance of trade daw, parang hindi daw to maganda. So, another example is sa accounting, yung about sa asset and liability. Kung titingnan natin, di ba, dapat mas mataas yung asset kesa sa liability. Pero sabi daw, mas maganda na mas mataas yung liabilities kesa sa asset kasi sa pagtaas ng liabilities natin, doon natin nakikita na umiikot yung pera natin kesa sa mataas nga yung asset natin, wala nga tayong inuutang pero nakastock lang naman yung asset natin, hindi natin napapakinabangan. And dapat naman, kung magkakaroon tayo ng mataas na liability, dapat meron tayong pambayad or asset. So, sa balance of trade, hindi naman sinabi na bawal tayo magkaroon ng trade deficit, pero kailangan lang natin magkaroon ng mas mataas na trade surplus kesa sa trade deficit. Domestic monopolies are often broken down by trade as more competitive international firms compare with them. This is why it is important to know if it increase or decrease the economy's overall production. A trade surplus, particularly in a pandemic such as this, may sound like good, but it may not be. So, in the last part ng slide, sinasabi na, oo, maganda yung pagkakaroon ng trade surplus. At the same time, parang hindi siya maganda, lalo na ngayong may pandemic tayong kinakaharap. Kasi, the more na nag-export tayo or nagkakaroon tayo ng transaction sa ibang bansa, the more na pumapasok yung pera and the more na pumapasok din yung virus sa ating bansa. Kaya oo, maganda yung pagkakaroon ng trade surplus pero at the same time hindi nga kasi nga ngayon may kinakarap tayong pandemic and the more na nagkakaroon tayo ng transaction, the more din na may pumapasok na virus or may posibleng tamaan tayo ng virus. Trade surpluses can generate jobs and economic growth, but they can also contribute to higher prices and interest rates in an economy. The trade balance of a country can also affect the value of its currency in global markets as it enables a country through trade to manage the majority of its currency. In certain situations, a trade surplus tends to boost the currency of a nation relative to other currencies, influencing currency exchange rates, although it depends on the promotion of the country's products and services as well as market conditions as opposed to other nations. A trade surplus, when based solely on trade results, means that there is a strong demand on the global market for the product of a nation, which drives the price of those goods higher and contributes to a direct strengthening of the domestic currency. So, trade surplus can generate more jobs and can generate economic growth. At sa pagtaas ng mga bagay na yon, mas tumataas din yung economic rate ng isang bansa. Like for example, di ba sa ibang bansa, mataas yung kinikita nila, mataas yung pumapasok sa kanila na pera. At the same time, mataas din yung bilihin. So, for example, sa United States, doon yung production ng Louis Vuitton na bag. And sa isang araw, kumikita sila ng more or less 10 million a day. So, sa part na yon, araw-araw silang kumikita ng 10 million. At sa araw-araw na kumikita sila ng 10 million, sa araw-araw din na tumataas yung bilihin ng isang country. Kasi nga, madami yung pumapasok sa kanila na pera, ibig sabihin, mataas din yung bilihin nila. Kasi nga, ang trade surplus ay nag-i-indicate ng economic growth. At sa pagtaas ng economic growth, tumataas din ang economic rate. So, the more the trade surplus occur, the higher the prices and rate of an economy arises. So, sinasabi lang sa last part na pag daw nagkakaroon ng trade surplus, merong malaking demand dun sa isang product na yon. And pag nagkakaroon naman ng trade deficit, konti lang yung demand sa product na yon. Kaya mas maganda talaga na magkaroon ng demand sa isang product para magkaroon ng trade surplus at para tumaas ang economic growth. Suggestion and recommendation. A trade surplus occurs when a country exports more than it imports, resulting in a currency inflow. The Philippines exports more commodities than it imports from other countries, which is an indication of a trade surplus. Based on our understanding, there are ways to consider achieving a trade surplus and reducing the trade deficit. Many countries have programs in place to promote trade surpluses. These nations tend to sell more goods and get more capital for their people, claiming that this translates into the better standards of living for domestic businesses and a competitive advantage. So, in this part, I'm going to tell the recommendation and suggestion kung bakit natin kailangan malaman how trade surplus helps to increase the total output of the economy. So, all in all, a country is having trade surplus when the export products or the export goods and services is higher than imported goods. So, based sa aming mga na-research, may mga paraan kung paano natin mapapataas yung trade surplus kaysa trade deficit. Gaya na lamang ng magpo-promote tayo ng mga products na mas mabenta or mas gusto ng mga ibang bansa kaysa dun sa mga ayaw nila. So, kunyari, mas mabenta yung sa skincare product, mas madami yung ipoproduce nating product kaysa dun sa mga ibang product tulad ng goods and services na ayaw naman nila. So, kahit naman sa pinakasimpleng explanation, may explain naman natin to. Kunyari sa sari-sari store, 'di ba? Kung gusto natin magkaroon ng mataas na benta, ang ibebenta natin yung mga gusto ng mga tao. So, the more na nagpo-produce tayo ng mga mabenta or kilalang mga product, the more na nagkakaroon tayo ng kita at tumataas yung ating trade surplus. So, in this study, we are able to know how trade surplus helps to increase the total output of an economy. And ang isang paraan na ito para malaman natin is yung mas mataas yung exported goods and services than sa imported. Dahil sa pagdami ng lumalabas na product sa ating bansa, mas madami naman pumapasok na pera sa ating bansa. So, all in all, malalaman lang natin na nagkakaroon ng economic growth ang isang economy kapag mas mataas yung trade surplus kaysa sa trade deficit.